Okay, and then whenever Brian gets on, he'll get me on. Sound good?
Okay. Yeah, and I'll share.
All righty. Hello? Oh, Brian's phone is ringing. Okay. And we're live. Everybody just joining us, if you're joining us for the first time, this is the Never Again Live podcast, hosted by Meir Halevi Weinstein, and you're being brought live from Israel this evening or from Texas this afternoon. Wherever you are, we're glad you're joining us. And so let's get started. We'll start in about 30 seconds. You'll just join us, get set and comfortable by your TVs or laptops or cell phones or pads or whatever technology lets us watch this show on.
Shalom Aleichem, Hebenu Shalom Aleichem, Hebenu Shalom Aleichem, Hebenu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem, Hebenu Shalom Aleichem, Hebenu Shalom Aleichem, Hebenu Shalom Aleichem, Hebenu Shalom, Shalom.
We've got a lot to talk about today. Everybody knows there's a lot going on in Israel and elsewhere in the world, and we're going to focus today on the siege against Zionism all over the world, from students to organizations to progressive Jews themselves who have now taken a stance on something wrong with being a patriot of the land of Israel, our homeland and our history. As always, Meir will be our host, and we have some special guests with this momentarily. To join us, like us, share the conversation, israelnow.ca. We have our Facebook page, YouTube page, and website, so no excuse for not finding us. And as I mentioned earlier, this is live from Israel. It's nighttime in Israel. Today's program, as I mentioned, will be focusing on Zionism, how it's under siege internationally from all ends of the spectrum, right-wing, left-wing, Jews, non-Jews. United Nations is against us. Even the countries who participated in the Abraham Accords are voting against us when something comes up in the United Nations regarding blatant discrimination against the state of Israel. While rockets rained over Israel, we were being blamed. And even the Jews were against us on college campuses. We know what from the river to the sea means. That means no more state of Israel. A recent vote at the United Nations, no surprise, regarding anti-Israel resolutions. And again, this isn't 6 months, a year ago, 10 years ago. This is this month, a couple of weeks ago, another vote came up. And again, as far as condemning Israel, 38 voted yes, 4 voted no, 5 abstained. Of course, Ukraine, who's asked us for help, they abstained. They don't even vote in our favor. And all of the countries from the Abraham Accords voted against us. And it's the double standard which is the most troubling. Israel is not perfect, but we're certainly more perfect than a lot of other countries and locations and places. A very interesting survey just came out and an in-depth research project. This was not done by an Israeli journalist. This was published in an Arab newspaper, which included the voice of the Middle East, and was published by a journalist who's from Gaza. Okay. During the COVID crisis, during the pandemic, the Palestinian Ministry of Social Development provided services to who? To 600 cases of child abuse in the West Bank. Now, I'm not suggesting that the Palestinian territory is the only location where there's child abuse. But if one case of child abuse is found to be questionable from a Jew, from a Hasid, from a yeshiva, it's all over the news. Nobody is aware of this happening. And again, there's same thing going on in lots of countries, in Mexico, but it's hidden when it happens amongst the Palestinian people. Almost half of the victims were under the age of 12. Most were domestic, meaning fathers, brothers, uncles. These consist of beatings, sexual abuse, and renting out children in order to make a living. Again, I am not saying that the Palestinian are the only ones where this happens, but it's the only ones where it's hidden. It happens to any other group, and it's international news and on every news station. Those numbers are bewildering. And these are only the ones that were reported. So why did the children grow up to hate Jews? These are some Palestinian school children on recess in a Palestinian Authority schoolyard. They're just playing a little game in our Judea and Samaria that they're referring to the West Bank, but we know that's ours, it's always been ours, and it will be ours again. So just so you understand what's going on here, these are 4 Palestinian school children, and they're dressed as Jews. They're imitating Jews. They're wearing yarmulkes. They're just walking down the street and having a fun little time. There's a little play they put on. You can see how cute they are with little yarmulkes, and then one of their playmates comes out dressed as a terrorist to kill them all. So we wonder why they grow up to be terrorists. This is school. He even has one of the children yelling mother in Hebrew. Now, how could this not be thought of as repulsive by any human being? So for those of you who are joining us, particularly those in Israel, since we're now coming out of Israel as well, I want to tell you a little bit about who we have with us tonight. Our host, always our host, is Meir Halevi Weinstein, who's an observant Jew, a proud Zionist, serving the IDF, dedicated his early years to investigating, identifying, and exposing Nazi war criminals and neo-Nazi activity. Today he spends his time between Toronto and Israel, focusing on exposing the radical influence in our schools, in our educations, from college to grade school, and BDS and left-wing anti-Semitism, which is often swept under the rug. Also joining us again shortly will be Ron East, who serves as co-host often and as a special guest. He's an unapologetic Zionist and a proud Jew. After finishing University of Winnipeg, he became the Canadian amateur wrestling champion of Canada. Then he went off and enlisted in the IDF, although he was living in Canada at the time. Following his military service, he served as executive director of Canadian Friends of the Hebrew University, and today he is the founder and publisher of the J.CA, Canada's leading source for pro-Israel Zionist news, local, national, and global. We have a special guest with us tonight as well. He's been with us before, and he has a lot to say of important facts. Is Ezra. Ezra Ridgely is the director of the Jewish Heritage Project, which you can find jewishheritageproject.com. It showcases the rise of Jewish life and culture in our eternal homeland, the homeland of the Jewish people, where our forefathers, our ancestors, our patriarchs strolled and walked and prayed. He's also written the book, Judea and Samaria, the Land of God. You could find that online. He also produced a film, The Rebirth of a Nation, which later on, time permitting, we'll show you a little trailer to that film. So hiding out in our South Texas studios down here's me, Dr. B, and I have a couple of jobs to do. These include audio, video, comic relief, as well as occasional referee when our guests get into disputes with one another. But that's Jews. 2 Jews together, you have 3 opinions. And we have 4 Jews together. We're going to have a lot of opinions. But certainly the opinion of Albert Einstein, nobody could contest. Albert Einstein said, the world is a dangerous place, not because of those who do evil, but because of those who look on and do nothing. So don't do nothing. Don't look on. Join us at israelnow.ca. And again, joining us from Israel will be Meir, our host. And as always, we'll start the show off, not to say show off, but he may be a show off, but we'll start the show off with the Parsha of the week, which is a special Shabbat we just passed through, which is the big one, the major one, Shabbat Hagadol, always the Shabbat which precedes Pesach. Mitzvah, and without any further ado, here's Meir. I'll be back later. Enjoy.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's great to be with you again. Let me just ask everyone who's watching if you could please share this with the different social media platforms that you are with, or Facebook groups, Facebook pages. We'd appreciate it. We'd like to reach a lot of people and change the situation, and change is necessary. This past Shabbat, it's known as Shabbat Hagadol, and Shabbat Hagadol is, I actually gave a Dvar Torah in the synagogue that I attended this Shabbat in Jerusalem. And Shabbat Hagadol is really the Shabbat before the Jews left Egypt. And what happened? What made it special? What made it special was that God told the Jewish people, take a sheep from the Egyptians that they use as a god, and you're going to tie it to your bedpost. When the Egyptians come and ask you what you're doing, you just tell them, that's what we're doing. We're taking your deity, we're tying it up, and on the fourth day, we're going to slaughter it, and then we're going to roast it fully, and then we're going to eat it fully. That was an act of defiance that the Jewish people had to do. Before the Jewish people left Egypt, God wanted the Jewish people to perform this commandment, this necessary commandment, to rise above everything and put it all out on the line and show incredible self-sacrifice, tremendous self-sacrifice and defiance, and do that to the Egyptians. Now, you may ask yourself, no, that happened a long time ago. How is it relevant today? It is relevant today. This is the relevance. I'm sure Jews were asking themselves that question in Egypt. Why do we have to do this? After all, God performed all kinds of miracles, the plagues and everything already. Why is it necessary? It's necessary because we have to internalize it. We have to get it. We have to get that really it doesn't matter what we do to appease, to make gestures, to bend to the anti-Semites. They will continue their campaign to want to wipe out the Jewish people. That was the case in Egypt. They had nothing to lose, and therefore do it. That was the case during the Crusades. That was the case during Nazi Germany. It didn't matter what we're going to try and do. The Nazis wanted to eliminate all the Jews, period. And today, we have a situation in Israel where when there's a terrorist attack that occurs, and the most recent one was in Tel Aviv, Thursday night. Celebrations at the Damascus Gate when we're told Arabs want to come in, or Muslims want to come in, or those of the Islamic faith want to come in and ascend the Temple Mount to their mosque up there. And it's a time of introspection. But what we're seeing is the introspection includes celebrating the murder of Jews, celebrating the terrorist attacks. And this is happening throughout the territories as well. certainly in Gaza, nonstop celebrations. In some Arab Israeli towns, Arab Israeli citizens are in the mix of celebrating. And so all the gestures that those who are left wing in Israel, it means nothing. There has to be a paradigm shift in Israel. There is a major difference between an Israeli state and a Jewish state. Jewish law is much different than Western democratic law. I believe Jewish law is superior. And on the left, they will say, what are you talking about? Jewish law is the same thing as radical Islamic law, as practiced in Iran and other countries where there's beheadings and killings and slaughter. No, it isn't. That's not the history of the Jewish people. That's not the history of Jewish law. Israel must be defined by our leaders in Israel as a Jewish state. Unfortunately, the government in Israel, the current government of Israel, is partnering with people, with Knesset members who embrace the philosophy of the BDS. That's true. There's a Knesset member who was exposed, who's with the Meretz party, part of the coalition, who went public and has no problem with the Palestinian Authority funding families of terrorists. There's a lot we have to discuss. I was talking with Ezra Ridley earlier in the week before this terrorist attack, and we were discussing another issue, an issue that's very important. And Ezra has some pictures and some video on this, that in Arab communities throughout Judea and Samaria, they are throwing garbage anywhere. There's like no respect for the land of Israel. I mean, and you'll see the footage and we'll talk about it. And I thought we were going to talk about that quite a bit, and we'll talk about various BDS groups in Canada and throughout the world that we have had an effect of shutting down some of their social media platforms. That's very good. But then the terrorist attack happens Thursday night, and we see what kind of support there is for it and what kind of praise there is for that. And the government policy is a policy of emboldening the concept of an Israeli state, not a Jewish state. There's even been a Knesset member from this coalition from the Yamina party. Yamina means right-wing party, the right-wing party. That's part of this coalition. There was a member of that party that defected. So this coalition no longer has a majority. They have 60 seats, and I believe probably in the next day, few days, we'll hear of other defections from that party. And what's their answer to those defections going on? They're reaching out to the Arab List Party. The Arab List Party on record, I mean, you might as well have food vendors be part of your coalition then. That's the same kind of lingo that they say. In fact, they go further, the Arab List Party. So we have a lot to talk about. I invite our viewers to make comments, post your comments or your questions. We'll do our best to answer it. Let's bring on Ezra Ridley, and then we'll start talking about these. Ezra, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you, Meir, for having me on again. And
Yes.
It's nice to be on, but there's lots of things, like as you said, there's lots of things that have to be discussed and the people need to know about that's going
Right.
on in the heartland of Israel, all over Israel. And I know you had me on to at least start off noting some of the things, how the land, that this is the land of God, is like the book says, Judea and Samaria, the land of God. It's the most sacred land in the universe. It's where the Judea and Samaria, the crown of it is Jerusalem. And this is where our nation was started. It's where the covenants were made with Abraham, our father, to give us this land. And right now we're having a problem with the non-Jewish temporary inhabitants because God promised to give it to the Jewish people, with them treating the land with the most utter contempt and disrespect. So the other day I was on a road between Beit El and Pisgat, and Ramallah is just on Pisgat actually overlooks Ramallah. And so when I was driving, getting close to Pisgat, I just saw this like garbage dump, like just pure garbage. I saw a tractor putting the garbage, and I noticed, I pulled over the car and I looked down and I saw that it was, these are like the hills of Binyamin are so beautiful. And the garbage is going down into the hill, and in the bottom of the hill, there's a little stream bed that goes in between the hills and goes on. And when it rains, all the filth and garbage gets carried away into the holy hills of Binyamin, where a lot of the great stories of the Tanakh took place. And this is how the land is being treated. And this is not the only incident. It's actually all over Judea and Samaria, and even the Negev and other places, but especially in Judea and Samaria, where there are just garbage dumps that are created and filth is poured out onto the land. And even raw sewage. And Regavim reported the other day when they went out in the Binyamin area to investigate raw sewage being poured out on an Arab village called Bir Site. They went out and they saw for themselves, like it's going right down to the valley into a stream. Like this water is the holy water, like it's, the most sacred place in the universe. And while they were out there, the Arabs came by and smashed their car windows. And but the land is not being respected on any level. And the garbage dump I saw was in the suburbs of Ramallah. And but that's not the only one that's taking Ramallah garbage. There's another one that's a little more far away, in which also garbage from Ramallah is being poured into an empty quarry pit. And all the filth just goes into the land, into the soil, to contaminate it with the worst things you can imagine. And
when we were driving, just really, I don't know what day it was. Maybe it was last week, Monday, Tuesday, when we were driving, coming back from Jerusalem, you were pointing out to me. It's very easy to see. Just 2 minutes out of Jerusalem, garbage everywhere.
Yes.
On the hills, throwing out of the window. We have a short video that you sent to us that I believe our doctor in the studio could show, and then we'll keep talking about that. So maybe we could get that video up on, so everyone
I'll put the video up, Ezra, just so you know, you can speak over the video if you'd like. I'll keep your mic on. So here's the video.
There is narration in the video, but
yeah.
We're now in the hills of Binyamin, traveling south from Yeshuv Beit El, which is the location where Jacob had his dream of the ladder to heaven, one of the most sacred places in the universe. Traveling toward Yeshuv Pisgat, just a few kilometers away, we're looking at the hills of Binyamin. This is the land of God. Hashem himself said to us, I bring you into a land of hills and valleys, land that the eyes of Hashem always looks upon from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And because he loved his people, the people of Israel, he gave this land to his people in a covenant carved into our flesh. However, there are some whom this land was not given in a covenant. Neither was it given to them, neither are they the natural inhabitants of the land, and they're using it as a garbage dump. And this dump comes from Ramallah, and the filth from the dump falls down the hill into the valley here in the Binyamin region, just about a half kilometer from Yeshuv Pisgat. There you see a little river stream of valley, and when it rains, the water's flowing, and it carries the filth and the dirt into the hills, deep into the hills of Binyamin. And this is our beloved land. This is the land of the Torah, where the great stories were played out. This is the land where the Tanakh was played out for the most part. This is where Joshua brought the camp of Israel into the land. This is our beloved land, but for some, it's a garbage dump. This is replicated all over Judea and Samaria. This is not unique whatsoever. For it's impossible for those who do not love the land or respect it, who are not the natural inhabitants, to treat the land with respect. Because this is our beloved land. We love it. It's the land of God. This is Judea and Samaria, the land of God. It shouldn't be looking like this. But in the suburbs of Ramallah, it also looks like this, because this is how the land is treated. It's not respected. Even out the front doors of their house, garbage is thrown. Whether it's a trash heap for broken down vehicles, it's a heap for the garbage thrown out the windows. And this is unacceptable. It must come to an end. It must be stopped. This is God's land. You're looking from Pisgat down into Ramallah, and it's a big city. We don't want the garbage over the land. Seems like the sun is setting over Ramallah as we speak. So this is the land that God gave to the people of Israel. We love our land, and we ask God to save our land, to have kindness and mercy, because we know that this is a land of holiness, and we want to redeem this land from all this filth.
Yeah, well, if you don't, if you're not the natural inhabitant of the land, then you can't respect it.
Ezra, that's and I saw it with my eyes. We were driving together, and then and the terrorist attacks, and not only the terrorist attacks, like they like to say, the apologists like to say that lone wolves, and we see the celebrations going on. The celebration at Shechem, the Damascus Gate, unbelievable celebrations on Har Bayit, celebrations throughout Judea and Samaria, celebrations in Gaza, celebrations in Al-Fahim and other cities in Israel proper that have large Arab populations. We have officials with the Palestinian Authority praising it. Apparently the father of the terrorists responsible for the Tel Aviv terrorist attack, the father was part of the Palestinian Authority as well, representing them in Jenin. And they're handing out also candies and sweets, and they're having a great time. They just celebrate that Jews have been murdered in these terrorist attacks. So on the one hand, we see the garbage dumps. They're just disregard for the land of Israel. And on the other hand, we're seeing the celebrations of Jewish blood and calls for more Jewish blood to be spilled. How do you feel, Ezra? We were talking about, let's talk about, this particular topic, and all of a sudden it's elevated with what happened in Tel Aviv. And there was just, I think a few minutes ago, an attempted terrorist attack in Ashkelon as well.
Well, everything is connected. It has to do with a culture. And if your culture is debased to the point where a large portion of it, not necessarily everyone, can accept murdering Jews, having contempt for land, having contempt for human life, and even contempt for their own people. I mean, as we know, even during war, they often use their own people as human shields. And at the same time, their own people will throw their garbage out the window, and they'll live in the area of their own garbage dump that they'll make in their own presence. And this is unacceptable behavior. for the holiest land in the world. And the Jewish people are the guardianships of this land. That means if you're a Jew anywhere in the world and you're listening, you are part of the responsibility of the guardianship of the land because it was given to you in the Torah. And ironically, the mandate for Palestine, actually, when they were sort of drawing lines in the sand, the Arabs, wherever they were living, that's where their country was. But when it mentioned a strait for Israel, it was given to the Jews of the whole world, literally following what the Torah says. So every Jew in the world has a responsibility for this land. You can't say, well, I don't live there. It doesn't exist. It does not exist. That argument doesn't exist. It was given to you as a heritage that has to be passed down to your children. So we're in a situation now that's very dire because of the situation and because the Arabs, I mean, you know, there are good Arab people, but the negative entities are in charge. They're creating the culture, and they're also occupying the land. They're taking land all over Judea and Samaria. And a recent stat just came out that in Area C, you know, they divide into 3 areas. Area A for Arabs. This is under the Oslo. Area B, which is both. And then Area C, which is Jewish area. Did you know that they've established, the Arabs, 72,274 illegal buildings in Area C. And besides that, Regavim is reporting that they've built dozens and dozens of roads and paved them, and even taking large swaths of land for plantings. Meanwhile, Jews are not allowed to settle their land. So this situation, not only are the Arabs being aggressive, they see a passive Jewish people who are doing nothing, allowing their own, what is important to them according to their own religious ideals. They can just go and take it, and they get away with it, while Jews are not permitted to build on their own land. If a Jew takes an initiative to settle on a hilltop, they're not allowed to. So we're creating a condition where they don't have any fear of us because they think we don't respect ourselves. And so, you know, they're not afraid. They're not afraid to do whatever they want. Kill, treat the land garbage, steal land, or whatever. And a lot of Jews throughout Israel now are living in a lot of fear over this. And what can I say, you know? It's not so good right now.
Let me tell you what I saw, what I experienced last night, because I spent Shabbat in Jerusalem. And Saturday night, I wanted to see what the situation is at Shar Shechem, the Damascus Gate. And it seems to be under control by the Israeli police. Didn't seem like there was too much of incidents going on. Just prior to Shabbat, early on Friday, I saw a large police presence throughout Jerusalem. But there were celebrations, just Ramadan celebrations by thousands of Arabs in East Jerusalem. Then I went to downtown Jerusalem, Ben Yehuda Square, that's usually full with people. And there were very few Jews out, hardly any. They're afraid. They're living in fear. So that's the situation in Jerusalem right now. In East Jerusalem, they're partying. There's no problem for the Arabs. And for the Jews, they're staying home. It's outrageous. It's completely outrageous. We have a video clip of a Palestinian Authority official praising what happened in Tel Aviv. I believe our doctor in the studio could show that clip. It's important to show it to the viewers.
So let's see what I have tuned up. First, I have the uncle of one of the terrorist psychos queued up. So I'll show that since it's on. And while that's playing, I'll find the other one as well.
I think this is it. I think this is the uncle, actually.
Oh, okay, good. Here it is.
Yeah.
Then away we
في هذه
go.
الأيام المباركة نعود من جديد بعد 20 عام لنقاتل ونؤكد أننا لن نستسلم. سنبقى على العهد حتى نيل حريتنا، حتى إعادة الأقصى ودحر هذا المحتل. رعد ذاك المتواضع الأديب الذي أعطى رسالة للجميع كيف يكون غضبه يكون ضد عدوه فقط، ليس ضد ابن دينه، وهو اليوم يري مرجلته فقط ضد عدوه، لا يشهر الأخ سلاحه على أخيه فقط ضد من احتل أرضه. ما زلنا نقاوم هذا المحتل، عزفنا عن الكلام وتركنا منصات الكلام لأصحابها. هنا الأفعال في هذا المخيم، هنا الدماء تنزل، هنا الدماء فقط هي الصادقة على نهج هذا المخيم وعلى توجهه. هنا لا نتكلم، لا نطلق أصواتنا بهواء، هنا نتقدم ونقاتل ونقتل ونقتل.
اليوم رعد زيدان أدخل السرور إلى قلوب كل أبناء الأمة الإسلامية والعربية، ليس فقط شعبنا الفلسطيني من النهر إلى البحر، وصار على درب العظماء والشهداء القادة الأبطال عثمان الساعدي ومحمد الساعدي أخوال الأبطال، وعلى درب والده العقيد فتحي أبو رعد هذا الأسير المحرر وأعمامه وأبناء عائلته المناضلين جميعا. اليوم رعد سطر أسطورة كبيرة جدا.
I want to make a quick comment that if you all aren't familiar with Memory, they make these videos, they let us show these videos, they've given us permission, they translate them, they search them. So if you haven't been familiar with Memory, go to their website or go to their Facebook page and support them because they support us and they're really an important group. Back to you.
Yeah, listen, the way we're going to defeat this, the way Israel, the Jewish people, is going to defeat this, is when we stand proud and we define Israel as a Jewish state, and we give proper definition to that, and we know what we're fighting for and what this land means to the Jewish people. Because right now there's confusion going on, and our leadership here in Israel is completely confused, certainly the government. And I'm not necessarily saying that Netanyahu has the answer. He was in power for many years, and this terrorism didn't come out of a vacuum. It's been building up for years, and there has been terrorism throughout the years also, even with Netanyahu at the leadership role. There's got to be a change, a paradigm shift in Jewish thinking collectively in Israel. That's a meme. It's unbelievable. They're reaching out right now. Naftali Bennett is reaching out right now to the Arab List Party. The Arab List Party embraces the ideology of Hamas and BDS, and it's supposed to be a criminal offense in Israel to support the BDS. There was a pro-Intifada rally at Tel Aviv University. How is that even allowed in Israel? You have professors at Tel Aviv University and Hebrew University that support the BDS. And the BDS, again, like I said, is illegal in Israel, but somehow it's taking place in Israel. Somehow the BDS is here and they're being welcomed into the government. There has to be a sea change, a paradigm shift in thinking, like I said, and the leadership, the government of Israel must reflect those Jewish values, proper Torah values, and the values of what a Jewish state is. And that's how we're going to defeat it, because you identify who the enemy is, who the fight is with. This is not a fight of one segment of Israeli citizens against another segment of Israeli citizens. That's a cop-out. That calls for an Israeli state, not a Jewish state. Israel must be defined as a Jewish state, and the leadership of Israel must be those who have the values, proper, true Jewish values. That's where we're at today. Ezra, come on.
Well, what you said is 100% correct. We have to stand up for who we are. We have an almost 4,000-year heritage that we've been lived by, and we have to believe in it. I mean, just think about it. Every male Jewish person in the world has a Brit Milah, covenant of circumcision. This is a land covenant. Okay, so we just practiced something for almost 4,000 years, maybe 3,800 years. since God first spoke to Abraham, made the covenant in Judea and Samaria. And now in 67, we captured the land. It was ours, and it was pretty empty at that time. And now that we got it, we didn't do the 3,800 years of Brit Milah as an act of vanity, But what happens is we didn't settle the land in 67, even though it was given to us in a great miracle war. And 6 years later, because we spent 6 years trying to give it back, 6 years later, we lost 2,500 lives, 12,000 injured, defending the same land that we were given on a silver platter 6 years earlier. And really, the message was simple. I believe someone said, Harold Cook had said that he saw that as a divine slap in the face because we weren't settling the land he gave us. And now we're in a situation, we've gone through the Oslo Accords, we've gone through all the situation now, and now we're allowing the Arabs to settle in most places, Judea and Samaria, unabated, almost every hilltop and valley that they want to take, they can, building their own roads. And basically, we're taking it almost to the next level of not exercising the covenant. And if we have Brit Milah, and every Jew in the world has it, it's because we mean it. It's not an act of vanity. It's like turning everything we did for the last, almost 4,000 years into an act of vanity. Because now we have the land God gave to us in order to elevate humanity, to create a holy nation, to redeem the entire world. And we're allowing the land to be taken from us. And maybe, there's different reasons why people, allow it to happen. Some don't like it. Some are misplaced compassion. Don't have any faith in God. How can we move them out? Or how will they ever leave? How will God move them out? Whatever. But if we just did our part, I think that God would be with us. Like in 48, this is a very important fact that most people don't talk about. In 48, they were establishing a nation. There was only like 600,000 Jews. They are greatly outnumbered by Arabs, but they did God's will, settling the land. They didn't say, look at the demographics. What are we going to do? But God performed a miracle for them. This was nothing to do with the religion. They were settling the land. That was God's will. You shall settle the land and possess it. That's the Torah commandment. So what did God do? To back up, to acknowledge, because if we believe that we do the right thing, then God will play his part and give us the land. So what happened? During that time, 700,000 Arabs went out of the land. Some were told, leave the land, you'll come back after the war. Some fled because of the war. 700,000. And then, meanwhile, there was 1 million Jews in the Middle East leading up to 48. And in 1944, there was 1 million Jews living in the Middle East. By 52, there was about just, less than 100,000. They were persecuted in every single Middle Eastern country, and 700,000 of those Jews came to live in Israel. So literally, in a handful of time, there was maybe 5 years, there was a demographic shift of 1.4 million people in favor of the Jews. That means 700,000 Arabs went out, 700,000 Jews came in, and nobody sees that this great miracle that happened, that if it didn't happen, there probably wouldn't be a Jewish state today. Now, if we just replicated that same thing, just settle Judea and Samaria, settle the land that is ours, we can say, God, we did our part. Hashem will come, and we don't know how Hashem will deliver us out of the situation we're in now, where it's being taken over, but he can do it. And that's part of our emunah. Just say, hey, you gave us this land, the covenant, we're going to settle it. Hashem, please help us, and he will respond.
Well, let me add something to that. That is a little contrary to hoping for a miracle. There are, like I said, there are celebrations taking place throughout Judea and Samaria and in Gaza. And the government of Israel, the current government of Israel, is allowing those people who are celebrating the murder of Jews to come in with work permits into Israel. Now, they're doing this because there are lobby groups, so-called smart business people, who are putting pressure that we want this type of labor coming in to help our bottom line in business. they have to be fully exposed, and that policy has to be changed completely, because no one who celebrates the murder of Jews, terrorist organizations, should be permitted ever to come into, and I mean ever, to come into Israel. So instead of waiting for, we'll do our part. Absolutely, we have to do our part and settle Israel. There's no question about it everywhere. But a minimal step. They're coming in, they celebrate our murder, and come on in, work here, no
And
problem.
what else they do? They poison the mind of the other Israeli Arabs, and they become extreme like Hamas. And now they're connected with Hamas in Gaza through social media, and they become one big network, right?
Right.
You know?
I think our doctor in the studio, he's got a video that he could show of breaches in the fence, the security fence, and that that exactly what you said. So they're coming in that way too, and they're receiving assistance from some Arab Israelis to come in and carry out their attacks. Here was a breach. This was
It is very troubling. This is a video which our guest last week had shown us, and it's the complicity of the Israeli Jews or the Israeli citizens just looking the other way while illegal aliens come in. And again, I'm in South Texas, so I know the fence problem, the gate problem. I'm pretty close to the border. And here is the same thing. We're afraid that who's going to come in with some Mexican workers or some Islamofascist terrorists. Well, why is that not a concern to these Israelis is mind-boggling.
It's interesting. This is where you see that the people are coming in, passing the fence, and coming in. Cars are simply.
And so what you see here is the border between Israel proper and our ancestral homelands. That fence is no more secure than is the Rio Grande, where the cartels come in and bring in fentanyl to America.
Waiting for them to take the Arabs from the other side of the fence that are cutting through and go to wherever. Army comes.
Volume's kind of low, but what they do, the taxi cabs are there waiting. They know. And they put them in, they bring them in. Are they going to work or are they going to kill Jews? They don't know, they don't care.
Right. Right. It's incredible. So you have Israeli Jews, like you said, that are turning a blind eye to what's going on. There's an infiltration through the fence. And no one's reporting anything, and no one's saying anything, and no one's seeing anything. And then you have some Israeli Arabs that are assisting them, bringing them in with the transportation to come into Israel. And that's what has occurred with some of these very terrorist attacks that Israel has been experiencing for the past few weeks. It's an abomination. It's unbelievable. I devoted my adult life to fighting anti-Semitism. I know what anti-Semitism is. I know what Nazis are. I know what the goals of the BDS and Hamas and their anti-Semitism, and it's just the most blatant Jew hatred that there is today. I know what their goal is, their objective. I know who they are, what these organizations are. And the fact that Israel plays games, or the leadership of Israel plays games, and you have journalists that Israel should really have no right to exist as a Jewish state, and that Jews should feel guilty about every single thing we do about Gaza or in Judea and Samaria or anywhere in Israel. It's an abomination. Like I said, there's got to be a paradigm shift in thinking. And Jews have to be proud of standing up for a Jewish state and building a Jewish state and defining a Jewish state. And that's what we fight for. Itamar Ben-Gvir, who is a Knesset member, last night he went to Tel Aviv. He went to Tel Aviv because there was to pay his respects to the site. There was a memorial last night at the very location where the terrorist attack was in Tel Aviv. So he went there to pay his respects. Left-wing BDS Jews were there, and they threw eggs at him. Now, in a normal Jewish state, that's really defined as a Jewish state, the police should apprehend them, cuff them, and put them in jail for that. Itamar Ben-Gvir was in Tel Aviv, just making it clear that the laws that exist in Israel, in the state of Israel, should be enforced, and they're not being enforced. And that kind of nonsense is allowed to go on in Tel Aviv just a couple days after the terrorist attack. It's outrageous. It's outrageous. I see this door at the synagogue that I went to on Shabbat was locked. You have to knock. You have to be let in on Shabbat in Jerusalem. This is going on. You know, Jews living in fear. It shouldn't be.
No.
And by the way, there's like 7 million Jews living in Israel. We're the majority. We can't have that mentality where we look up and there's this fear that we have, like we're little tiny grasshoppers and they're giants. That's not true. We didn't survive all these years to come to Israel to live a life like that. Jews excel in every single field imaginable. Well, we must excel also in the direction and in the definition of what it means to be a Jew and what a Jewish state is. And we have to show the world what the meaning of self-respect is. That's out the window right now in Israel, but it has to change. It's got to change. Mm-hmm. What are you seeing this past week or the past few days?
Well, it's hard to argue with anything you're saying, but we're in a really tough situation, and it's going to be a very tough way out. But we have to, as Jews, to the Jews, let's say the left wing who don't know better because they never grew up religious, somehow we have to reach out and demonstrate to them that demonstrate the love of God to them. That's hard to, it's hard to understand. They may not respond, but at least they know who we are, and that we have a unity problem. And somehow, we may not on a religious basis, be on the same page. But if we show them that, hey, we actually care about their well-being and how that's going to be done, that's a different story. But we've got to overcome the rifts between ourselves by just loving and respecting each other. And that will also bring bracha and blessing to the people of Israel when we can love each other. There's a big thing that's, we've been exiled for 2,000 years because we didn't achieve that. We're doing better than we ever did before. I know there was a stat that there's more charity organizations per capita in Israel, people involved in charities, than any other country in the world. So it shows you that we're doing some things right, but that means we're on the path. We just got to keep going and reach out and show the love and kindness of God to every Jew we can. We can meet in Israel, and hopefully God will respond with the loving kindness toward us when he sees that we're doing our part in that too. It's a very difficult challenge because we have so many difficulties.
I think you're right. Obviously,
we have the whole world fighting us.
Arguments about
Yeah, we have the whole world against us, so it's difficult. Even just being a Jew, it's difficult. So yeah, the dynamics are so great. They're so great. Like the EU, we can talk about Arabs trying to take land, but who's helping them? The EU is financing it. Regavin has revealed that they're sitting in Ramallah at tables with charts and maps on the wall. The EU in Ramallah, how they will take over Area C. That means they're supported, encouraged, and financed by the European Union. So the Arabs just can't go in and build 72,274 illegal buildings in Area C. They're getting big time help from the European Union and probably the UN and other non-government organizations in Europe and around the world that are raising money and giving it to them, helping them build roads, renting tractors, hiring all kinds of laborers. And they're coming even I believe they're bringing even engineers, and they're showing the strategy and how they can make life so unbearable for the Jews that live in so-called Area C, that one day, as it's described by, I believe, the leaders of the sovereignty movement, Nadia Matar and Yehudi Katzover, that they want to drain the water out of the aquarium. So the fish live in the aquarium. The fish are the Jewish people. The water is the land which we live on. But if you take all our land away, all the water away, the fish will choke and eventually die. So if they take all the land away by happening everywhere, then the Jews who live in the settlements, in the communities in Judea and Samaria, they'll have nowhere to go because they won't be able to live a life anymore. You can't even go on the roads. And that is the strategy, and that is actually their plan, to make it so that Jews just can't live here anymore. That's the strategy. And European Union is committing a cataclysmic sin and crime, but I believe the UN is also part of it because they're upholding all these so-called refugee camps, which are crimes against humanity. Can you imagine? The Arabs have refugee camps populated by their own people. That means if they were in any other country in the world, they'd be free, but among their own people, well, this is propagated by the UN, the UNRWA, you call it, and they finance these camps. They give the donations for money and food, but these are second-class citizens, and they've grown up now for over 60 years, and I believe there's 13 camps. And the UN is propagating a crime against humanity, against Arab people, because those Arab people that are living in these camps, they're growing up into it. They're victims, so they're being trained by the extremists in terrorism, and the UN just keeps feeding them and keeps it going because keeping the hope that one day Israel will be conquered and you can come and live in Israel, because that is the ideology, that one day, and there's some even of these camps in Lebanon. So it's a crime. It's meant to destroy Israel. They're there for a reason, as a tool to create a situation to destroy Israel. So we have a lot of problems, but we got to pray and keep doing our best and standing up, because when we stand up for ourselves, I believe that Hashem will respond, and he's giving us a good army and a very strong army. But, you know, can I say?
Look, what has to be is we have to, Jews collectively, Jews who understand what it means to be a Jew and what it means to have a Jewish state. We have to engage in conversations with our fellow Jews on that topic. And we can't hide from it. Like I said, there's got to be a paradigm shift. Of course, there's the UN, there's UNRWA, there's Amnesty International, there's a whole sea of anti-Semites out there. That's our history. That's where politicians, skilled politicians and skilled business people in the Jewish camp have their work cut out for them. But the lay people in Israel, the lay just Jews who are knowledgeable, have to engage in these conversations with their fellow Jews and get them to think and get them to understand what it means to be a Jew and what a Jewish state is. Without having those conversations, it is going to be the same as yesterday, the same as last week, the same as a month ago. There's got to be a change in thinking, and we have to be ready to sit down and talk. And I'm not talking about shouting. I'm not talking about anything like that. But I'm talking about having these conversations. And these are worthwhile conversations to have in order to eventually have that change. Because right now, like I said, with Tel Aviv, Itamar Ben-Gvir going there and eggs being thrown, I want to sit down with those leftists. And I'm not saying that in one day I'm going to flip anyone around or anything like that. But I want to have conversations with these people like that. And I want a lot of other people to be able to sit down and have these conversations and let them tell me clearly, no, I don't want a Jewish state. Okay, but and you'll define what you want. And I'll give you a definition of what it means a Jewish state. There is a difference there, and we can't hide from it. Anyways, we've been on for about an hour. It's been a very informative show. I think there's another video that our doctor in the studio wants to show. So what do we have there?
Well, there's a bunch of videos which I think are pertinent. I'm going to show just a minute from this because, again, it's the propaganda that manages,
Right.
as Goebbels said, that if you tell a lie often enough, people start to believe it. So this is the representative that the progressive Jews somehow think that she's okay because she's on our side, and that's an absurdity. So let me just show this quick little partial clip from memory once again.
We
Okay.
need to pay attention to the Anti-Defamation League. We need to pay attention to the Jewish Federation. We need to pay attention to the Zionist synagogues. We need to pay attention to the Hillel chapters on our campuses, because just because they're your friend today doesn't mean that they have your back when it comes to human rights.
Yeah, doesn't have your back when it comes to human rights. Hillel, I mean, she's accusing Hillel of being a bad organization. I'd accuse it of being too liberal on most college campuses. So kind of interesting that's her take on it. I'll let you guys talk for another couple of minutes while I find another video. What I would like to show, Ezra, is just a trailer to the film you did, because I think it's a good break for everybody. Then after that, you can kind of come up with your closing comments, and then we'll take it from there. So here's a little video coming up. I'll give you, you can introduce it while I find it.
Well, a movie that that was finished, I guess, almost 2 years ago, and the last year it was played 4 times on the Jewish Life Television Network in America, called The Rebirth of a Nation, basically to showcase the rise of Jewish life and culture in Judea and Samaria and Jerusalem, and to show the wonderful things that's happening, and to make a statement saying, hey, the baby's going to be born. God said in Isaiah, you know, shall I bring to the time of the delivery and not cause it to be born? So the pain's worse at the end, but the baby will be born, and that's God's kingdom. And we're going through that pain right this very moment. We're talking about it right here on the show, but the movie is trying to say hope that God will help us in the end to break through, and the kingdom will be born, and Mashiach will reign, and you know, that's really what the movie's trying to inspire people to see hope, because, you know.
With gratitude to Hashem, today you are invited by the Jewish Heritage Project to witness the unfolding miracle of the redemption of the Jewish people on their sovereign land in Judea and Samaria, which is crowned by Jerusalem. Be a witness to the rebirth of a nation on the land where the Jews first established their sovereignty, the very land where the promises and covenants of God were made to the fathers of the Jewish people almost 4,000 years ago. This documentary commemorates the beginning of the 50th year of Jewish resettlement in Judea and Samaria, which began with the rebirth of Kiryat Arba in 1971. The Jewish historic attachment to their land has now come full circle with the rebirth of a nation.
This map is from the year 1990, in the time of the government of Yitzhak Shamir, Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir. This is a map of Shomron and Yehuda, planning settlements and cities for 2 million Jews.
Zionism demands that you create facts on the ground first, and then the permit will come later.
The 6-Day War was the continuation and the fixing of what was missed in the 48 Independence War. The 6-Day War is really an independence war, independence for the heartland.
They said, okay, we'll sign an agreement with the settlers, and as the rabbin said, within 2 weeks, all of them will disappear from the mountains.
David the Melech lived in this region. King David lived here.
My name is A.Y. Katza. Right behind me is my home, where I live with my wife and 6 children, and about 1,300 grape trees.
That's when we started our sovereignty campaign. Basically, we're in green now. Basically, we created a movement called the Sovereignty Movement.
Is actually a conglomerate, but in this case, overnight, Rocks joined together into one, the ones that were under Jacob as he slept in this place.
Out there. That this is the focus over here where the Mishkan was, because people would eat the sacrifice. They had to see the place.
So my advice to everybody is that if your heart is here, then your body should be here. Everybody should be here. And that's to live and to grow in Israel, to move to Israel, to come home.
Ladies and gentlemen, the rebirth of the nation. God promised us that the Jewish nation would return to its land, and this is proof.
Sitting right now in Mount of Olives, viewing the Temple Mount, viewing the old city, and viewing all of Jerusalem. And thank God today, we are in a neighborhood, a Jewish neighborhood.
Joseph, Harbracha wine, l'chaim, to life, to blessings. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei pri hagafen.
קטונתי מכל החסדים ומכל האמת אשר עשית את עבדך. קטונתי מכל החסדים ומכל האמת אשר עשית את עבדך. קטונתי מכל החסדים ומכל האמת אשר עשית את עבדך.
So my comment on that is we've tried Land for Peace. It doesn't work. We need to realize that, although we've tried, and Land for Peace just brings less land and more dead Jews. So my little commentary, a picture's worth 1,000 words, is all they ask is a little Arab land. We've done that. It doesn't help. It doesn't work. So guys, want to give your closing comments, and I'll play a little music to end the show with.
Ezra, that's fabulous footage.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So the only comment I would have is that if you're living in Husla Aretz, outside the land, and it's in your heart, and a lot of people, I know life is busy and hard and difficult. I understand all those dynamics, and they're real. But we need to send to Hashem a message that we care and try to sort of rise above. And even if you pray or you send a donation to an institution in Judea, Samaria, Jerusalem that you want to help, you're sending a message to God that you care. And sometimes we care, but we don't do nothing because life is a heavy weight. So try to take that little extra effort maybe and support something in Judea and Samaria and let God know that you care and say, hey, Hashem, save our land. We want to come home soon. And I believe that things can change faster than what we believe. Redemption can come suddenly, and because Hashem can do it. That's why it can come suddenly, because He's our God, and we're His children. Like He says in Torah, you are the children of God. That means we are His children. He loves us, and He cares for us.
Excellent. Well put. Well, listen, like I said, we're going to have those conversations with fellow Jews and move forward and change the thinking. Those conversations have to happen here in Israel, and those conversations have to happen in every Jewish community throughout the world. There's a watered-down version of Judaism taught, certainly in diaspora, and we need those conversations, especially there. In order to have proper advocacy, proper attachment to Israel. So I encourage you, join this way, join Israel now. Be proud about Israel, be proud what it means to be a Jew, be proud about fighting for a Jewish state. It's an amazing endeavor. It's an amazing challenge. Do it. That's Judaism. That's the Shabbat HaGadol. It's what the Jews did back then. They saw everything failed, nothing worked, any kind of appeasement didn't work. Let's rise to the occasion and take a bold step, a paradigm shift. That's the call today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Meir.
Okay, I'll show to the what's become our favorite closing song. We used to use a different song every week, but this is a group of young men who all made Aliyah, none of whom are from Israel. All are glad to be back home, as we say. So let's show this. And at the end, we'll play Hatikva as always. Look forward to seeing you all next week. Over the next couple of days, we'll let you know what time. And here's a little music.
Left it all to be with you. Distant dreams have now come true. Walk the streets of legends told. We've come home. We've come home. We've come home. And we'll never stand alone. After 2,000 years, we are home. Not a native of this land, bring me up and take my hand. Sapphire seas and golden sand, a place called home. We've come home, we've come home to a land of our own. After 2,000 years, we are home. ארצי מולדתי, על אדמתי צעדתי, עברי עתידי, זה ביתי. We come home, we come home, and we'll never stand alone. After 2,000 years, we are home. We've come home, we've come home to a land of our own. After 2,000 years, we are home. After 2,000 years, we are home.
Before we put on Hatikva, just wanted everybody talking about BDS to know how much we support BDS, and you need to support it also. BDS, buy Israeli products, donate to Israeli causes, support Israel as a nation, as our nation, as our home. Let me find Hatikva. There are so many renditions of it, but certainly this is our favorite here.
נפש יהודי ועל כל ישראל.
Fabulous show.